Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
My next guest is no stranger to you. He is one of the most preeminent and respected researchers in the field of occult and religious philosophy. He's been researching and writing about these topics and speaking around the world for 5 decades now. His website is jordanmaxwellshow.com. That's jordanmaxwellshow.com. Huge shout out to Andy and all the folks at freestylehomes.com. That's freestylehomes.com for sponsoring this particular special show. And I do want you to go to freestylehomes.com and thank Andy personally there. Let's welcome back to the programme our great friend, the one and only Jordan Maxwell. How are you, Jordan?
Well, I thank you for being back on, and it's always a pleasure to be on your show. And I want to thank the sponsor also. And yeah, it's very interesting time that we're living in, for sure.
These are interesting times, Jordan. There's no two ways about that. Yeah, big shout out again to freestylehomes.com, and Andy, do check him out. Thanks for doing this, by the way. Just to remind the listeners, a couple of months ago, having caught up with Jordan, who's had a lot of difficulties with his old website having been taken from him many years ago, and all these materials and everything else that goes with it, all the work that he had done. I suggested that he come on the programme once a month to talk about a specific topic. Jordan readily agreed. Hasn't asked for anything, Jordan Maxwell, nothing. It was my idea to ask somebody to sponsor it. That's been done. Last month we had a fantastic and terrific conversation about the hidden meaning and the secret meanings of words. That was incredibly well received. No big surprise there. And this month, Jordan wants to talk about one of my most, undoubtedly my favourite subject, and that is the great, I didn't say great test, but the great religions, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, and their deepest, darkest secrets. Fascinating, Jordan. I have to say, my friend, it's over to you.
Well, thank you. The three great religions in the world share a lot together. It's just that we are never, we don't think about that. We think about three individual religions. Actually, there's all three are very close together, teaching the same things, having the same precepts, concepts, and also can be traced back to an original. So all three of our religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are all the daughters of and the offspring of Hinduism. Hinduism gave birth to all three of our major world religions today. And there's even more connections than just the parent religion. Why are there three major religions? Why wouldn't they be 6 or 12 major religions? Why are there 3? Well, it's because triune is very interesting and very important to the secret societies that rule our world from behind the scenes, the governments behind the government. And 3 is very important to them. It's always been very important in the occult world. Ask anyone who deals with metaphysics and especially with with mathematics, and you will find that 3 is very important. So you have to have, excuse me.
No, take your time, Jordan. Grab a glass of water there if you have a glass of water handy. Yeah,
I have to. But 3 is a very important number in the occult world. That's why you have in India Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and Egypt is Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Christianity is Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Judaism is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Baseball, 3 bases in your home. And there's only 3 points to a triangle. Triangles based on the pyramid. And so 3 is very important. And it's an extraordinary dark connection to world governments. We have a first world, second world, and then we have third world countries. And so right off the bat, there's a very interesting woven into our life today, numerology, numbers, secret sciences, symbols, emblems, national coats of arms, halotry, seals, presidential seals. All of these things are well thought out, and they are all speaking to you. They're telling you something about who owns what, who's in control of what area, etc., by the symbols and emblems around you. So that's interesting on it, on itself in relation to numerology and numbers. But my interest goes further into the different religions and how they crossbreed. They lend ideas and concepts to each other, and as I said, Hindu gave birth to all three. There seems to be in all three religions the idea of a Messiah, one who is to come and save the world. Well, that goes back to India, to the whole concept of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and the destroyer, and the one who creates worlds, etc. And so it's just interesting how these religions have come about. And so today, of course, people who are into Judaism think that that's the only religion in the world, and their God is the only God in the universe, period. So when they talk about God, they talk about the Almighty Creator God, period. Uh, and my feeling is, is that yeah, that's true if you're talking about the Jewish God. But now, if you're talking about the Christian God, that's the one and Almighty Creator and all the universe from the Christian perspective, unless, of course, you're talking about Islam, and that's Allah, which is the almighty creative God, unless, of course, you're talking about India. So it depends on where you happen by chance to have been born. It depends on, by chance, where were you born, what culture did you grow up in, and what God did your culture worship. And then you begin to see that no, all of these concepts and ideas about God are man-made and usually politically man-made to keep a political body together. So there's a very big difference, as I've said before.
Can I just jump in
But
there just for a second?
yeah,
Because it's brilliant you talking about the origins of these religions going back to India. Because one of the great deceptions is that we are told or given when we were in school. Especially, I went to a Catholic primary school. I suppose you would call it a grade school, Jordan. When I grew up, and we were always told that all the religions, the religions we were talking about anyway, they came from Abraham. That's what we're told all the time. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam comes from Abraham, Father Abraham. Everything splintered out from him, and that's what we're told. But it isn't true, of course.
Yeah, no, it's not true at all. Abraham, in fact, never lived. There was no such a man as Abraham. You can ask, was there, let's go back and ask him in India, was there a Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva? No, it's just words and terms that are given to a set of gods. It's given to a theological set of gods. Now, whether Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva actually, in fact, ever lived, obviously no, it's part of a religious doctrine. Well, then what about Osiris, Isis, and Horus? Were they actual living people? Don't think so. We all indications are they're just terms and words that were given to a particular theological mindset in Egypt. Well, what about Father, Son, and Holy Ghost in Christianity? Were those actual people? Well, from all indications and academic indications, there was no Jesus, and talk about the Holy Spirit. Well, that's spiritual. That's not of this world. If you want to talk about God the Father, whatever that is, and so all the ideas and concepts about God are all basically understandings about spiritual principles and ideas, but none of them actually existed as people? Well, the same thing with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There was no Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. There was no King Solomon or a King David. This is from the Jewish literature, from the encyclopedias of Judaica and Jewish reference works, and from Hebrew reference works at the Hebrew libraries that I go to and sit and talk for hours with the rabbis and the teachers. And that's one thing that all the religions, share also, is the fact that their major names and the major leaders, in point of fact, never existed. There's actually literature out there now circulating around the world by some very impressive people with credentials in Islam saying that that Muhammad never lived. There was no such a man as Muhammad. That's my personal belief, and I base that on the fact that everybody else in that league, as religious leaders and great prophets that have come into the world, didn't exist. Well, then what makes you think Muhammad existed?
Jordan, is it not possible? Now, listen, I don't doubt you for a second. And the lovely thing about you and the lovely thing about talking to you over the years is you're very humble. And you always say that this is your best deduction based on the evidence you have to hand. And you've always said that, which is marvellous. There's no arrogance at all about you. Bob Price, who's a renowned theologian, he's been on with me on various radio shows over the years. Bob used to be a devout minister, and then left it when he began to discover much of what you discovered, and when he realised that it was pretty much a lie, most of it, or all of it. But the thing about Jesus, do you not think it's possible that there was, an agitator around about the time Jesus was supposed to have lived, a socialist? Somebody who was kind, somebody who was saying things, speaking out against the establishment and standing up for the little guy. Is there any possibility that somebody took the story of a genuine bloke, as we would say in England, a genuine guy, and turned it into this Jesus story? What do you think?
Well, the Jews today will tell you that there was a Jesus, but he lived 100 years before the Jesus that we know of would have lived. He would have lived about 100 years before the one called Christ, and his name was Yehoshua ben Pindera. Yehoshua ben Pindera. Ben, of course, in Hebrew means the son of. So the Jews, the Jesus that the Jews would tell you about is Yehoshua, which is Joshua or Jesus, and they call him. The last name was Pindera. Pindera is a panther, and the reason why is the panther has spots. It's one of the cats that has spots, and so they refer to this man named Yehoshua ben Pindera, or Joshua, the son of the panther, because he had spots. But that now we know is connected to the spots on the mushroom, the Amanita muscara. And there's been quite a bit of writing over the years by the experts on the life of Jesus, whether he existed or not, etc. And so I don't know. I wasn't there. There could have been a man named Jesus, but the one that we think of in Christianity definitely did not live. And here's another point on that, is that Christianity, and Christians will tell you, well, yeah, but Josephus wrote about Jesus. Well, actually, in point of fact, no, Josephus did not write about Jesus at all, period. But if you go to the works of Josephus and look up in the back of the book to find Jesus in the works of Josephus, you will find that there are 13 different Jesuses mentioned in the works of Josephus. 13 different people named Jesus Josephus wrote about. Only one of them is the Jesus the Christ. And when you go to that particular quotation in Josephus about Jesus the Christ, it is overwhelming and obvious to anyone that it was taken and put into Josephus in the Middle Ages has nothing whatsoever to do with the original works of Josephus at all. And the reason why is because of even where it sits in the work of Josephus. Josephus is talking about all the terrible things which happened to the Jews in the ancient world, all the horrible wars, all the disgraceful things that happened to the Jews. And then right in the middle of lamenting about all these terrible things, he says, and also there was Jesus, who was the one called Christ, and everyone realized that he was the Christ. And then he goes on to say, and then there were other terrible tragedies that were happening, etc., etc. And he only has, I think, 3 sentences about this man called Jesus the Christ. And it's right in the middle of lamenting and crying about all the terrible things that happened to Jesus. And then in the middle, he throws in a couple of 3 sentences about Jesus the Christ. Well, upon looking at all of this, there has been a lot of people who have done some research on this and found out that that was added. Obviously, it was added because it makes no sense where it is. And if Jesus the Christ was a prominent figure to Josephus, he would have at least given him a couple of paragraphs, at least, instead of 3 sentences in the middle of lamenting about Israel. So that was put in there by the priesthoods, probably in the Catholic Church, put that in there, woven in, because they realized that over the earth there's only going to be about 3 people who know anything about Josephus, and only one of them is going to read anything. And so we'll put it in there because nobody knows about Josephus anyway, nobody cares, so throw a couple of sentences in there. It makes no sense to talk about Jesus the Christ, the Savior of the world, and give him 3 sentences in a whole, enormous volume of work. 3 sentences.
Like an afterthought, Jordan, like an afterthought. Let me just read out a couple of quick tweets. Jordan Maxwell is on the line to us live tonight for the 2nd episode in a series of specials, monthly specials. This month's and last month's brought to you by freestylehomes.com. Check them out, freestylehomes.com. Jordan, this is a little bit off topic, but I'm going to mention it because it's interesting. Paul Jackson tweeted this. Jordan was talking earlier on about 3 being so important, the number 3. Hi, Richie. If this is true, then there must be a 3rd World War coming. Is there, Jordan?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that we are actually in it. I think the 3rd World War is a different kind of war than the first 2. It's more, rather than concentrated all at one time in history, all at one time when the whole world is a conflagration like World War I and II. I think the 3rd World War is already operating right now. We're in the middle of it. And it's being designed to slowly but surely take out certain areas of the world, certain governments, and put all new establishment in, slowly but surely, defeating freedom all over the world. Freedom is not only being defeated, it's being wiped out all over the earth, little by little by little. But it's being done with the use of words. We keep talking about, America is spreading democracy. Anyone who has more than 500 brain cells knows that the democracy is probably the worst form of government a people can have. A democracy, the very word itself, if you look it up in a dictionary, democracy comes from demos, a Greek word, demos, ocracy. Ocracy means the rule of. The rule of is ocracy, and demos is a crowd, a large, unruly crowd in the street. That's why when you see riots, they talk about it as a demonstration. A demonstration means riots in the street. Well, that's a hell of a way to run a government, is by riots and by thousands of people in the street. Nobody knows what they're doing. It's all anger and violence. But that's the people speaking. That's a democracy. And so democracy boils down to the rule of the mob. Whatever the people want, that's the rule of the mob. Well, suppose You know, suppose you're white living in Africa and you got 50,000 blacks want this white guy to be hung, or the opposite way around. You got 500 whites wanting a black to be hung. Well, according to democracy, it's the rule of the majority, the rule of the people. So it doesn't matter if the person was guilty or not. It doesn't matter if they've got the right person. What matters is that everybody agrees. We want him dead. So that's it. There's nothing to protect you. So in a republic is different than a democracy. It doesn't matter how many people in your city hate you. You have a right to exist, a right to speak, and a right to meet, and have protections that are provided to you. And so the masses cannot get rid of you just because they don't like you. Well, that's the difference between a republic and a democracy. So when you hear people talk about democracy, understand it means Marxist-Leninist communism. This is why all Marxist-Leninist communist states, starting with the Soviet Union, were always referred to as the People's Democratic Republic. Even today, China is referred to as the People's Democratic Republic. The People's Democratic Republic of Cuba, the People's Democratic Republic of North Korea, the People's Democratic Republic. Get it? Democratic means a rule of the masses, of the mobs, and the community. It's called communism. So it's democracy is actually communism, and it's par equal for anything else that's going on in the earth. Boils down to one thing: democracy is Marxist-Leninist communism. That's what is being spread around the world. And because of that, all countries are now realizing that the individual has no more rights ever again. You can be arrested, thrown into prison, thrown into jail, taken to some far-off warehouse and tortured. You have no protections as an individual. Why? Because you're just a number on a plate. You're just a number and a blip on a computer.
We saw
There
that,
is nothing.
and we saw that, of course, here in Britain in the last few weeks when David Cameron was able to use a drone to murder 2 British citizens overseas based on the idea that they were working with ISIS. You're absolutely right. One of the things that's going through my mind listening to you is how wonderful religious belief is for the elite and the hidden hand. They must love it, Jordan, because the poorest people in the world and the most downtrodden people in the world are waiting and waiting and waiting for this beloved, wonderful symbol of hope to deliver them from the heinous oppression. And while they're waiting for some fantasy figure to swoop down from the sky to deliver them from the horrors of the modern world, nobody's doing anything, and things are getting worse for them.
Well, that's exactly right. I think it was Napoleon who said that religion is the only thing that keeps the poor man from killing the rich, is religion. Because if there was no God coming and there was no hope for tomorrow, then the people of the earth would have had enough of the wealthy and done something about it. So, but religion teaches you, no, just go along to get along, and crawl on your knees to the church and make sure you send your money and send and leave your home to the church, etc. And when you die, the Lord will love you.
So
but
it's
in this
worth
world,
it.
But
so,
in this world, you got nothing, zero, period. You can't affect anything. You can't decide anything. The reason why is very simple. You don't know anything. So, knowledge is power. And that's why the people of this world have no power. They have no knowledge of where things come from. It's amazing to me because I've been the opposite all my life. It's just amazing to me to see millions of people going to a religious service and have no idea about what the words mean, what the concepts are, what they're doing, why they're doing it, what the clothes the clergy are wearing, what the symbols mean. Why did they go to a church? If you find out what the word church means and where it comes from, it's it's astounding. And people worship Jesus the Christ, having no idea in the world what the word Christ actually, in point of fact, means. And so, and you see the Queen Mum being anointed with holy oil. They take a big silver spoon at her inauguration and pour oil on her head, and everyone is beating themselves in sackcloth and ashes, and are trembling with respect for a divinely appointed person to rule the empire, never ever realizing what all of the symbolism, where it came from, why it is used today, and what it means. And it all boils down to ignorance. The people of this world, like the Bible says, my people are dying from a lack of knowledge. So knowledge is power, and that's why the peoples of this world in all countries have no real power. They can get together and riot like they did in Egypt, like they've done in Los Angeles, like they've done in Greece. They can riot and pillage the streets, but after it's all over, they have changed nothing. The rich are still rich, the poor are still poor, and the government is now even stronger than what it was the day before.
Spot on, and life gets more and more unbearable. Now,
that's right.
I know you want to get into symbolism and symbology and these religions, and maybe because listeners are really keen to get your take on who is ultimately, or who or what is ultimately behind the promotion of these religions. I know you want to get into all that, but as you won't be surprised by, there are dozens and dozens of comments and questions. So I'm going to get through a few. Please don't be offended if you've sent an email or a tweet and it doesn't get read out. It's not because I'm selectively deciding what to read out and not. There's not thousands, but there's dozens of them already. So I'm going to read a couple out quickly. Peter Tomlinson. Hi, Peter. Richie and Jordan, you can't ignore the fact that Jews and Christians share the Old Testament as a reference of worship and therefore the same God. Also, Muslims believe in Jesus Christ. Surely those three religions share a common ancestry, says Peter. Lynn was on to say, hello Lynn, I was always told that the Bible stories didn't relate to actual living people, but planets and their movement. It wasn't supposed to be taken literally as it is. That is what Lynn was taught. Now, Jordan, if you want to pick up on any of those points, you can do so in a second. I just want to get through a few more of these quickly. And Lawrence is listening in South Africa. Hi, Lawrence. Richie, Jordan might talk about the true meaning of the PX symbol used by Christian churches. We might get into that as well. Massive amount of tweets there. Going to read through some of them really quickly, and then we'll let Jordan take over again. There's so many of them, Jordan. Yeah. You know the way it is. You just don't want to offend people. It is a very interactive show anyway. I'm always encouraging people. Scott Cornish was on to say, people who believe in Christianity believe in a man that fed 500 with one fish and a few loaves of bread, or vice versa. He walked on water. He died. He was born. He was risen. He came from a virgin birth. And they say people like Jordan Maxwell and David Icke are crazy, says Scott. That's a good point, Scott. Andrea was on to say, is the Lutheran Church more trustworthy when it's compared with the Roman Catholic Church? That's an interesting one. Karen in Scotland says, I agree with Jordan. I was thinking this was a systematic taking of freedom and people are just sleeping. Now, I've got a question for Jordan on that. Irish Media Alliance on Twitter. How are you guys and girls, whoever you are? Is Jordan familiar with Eucadia and the research of Franco Collins? If he is, be nice to get his opinions, says Jordan. And there's a load more tweets, but I'll get into those in a few minutes. Jordan, we talk about the people. I'll tell you what, I won't ask you a question. If you want to pick up on any of those points, go ahead.
No, I was just interested. I'm just interested to see the response from people.
Because I've got a question for you.
I don't feel that I need to comment on anything yet.
Good stuff. Well, look, I know in the second there, because we've got about 7 or 8 minutes now before we break for the news. But I want to ask you, do you know what? I should have asked you this before. And I should have asked David Icke and Jim Mars and everybody else who's come on this program over the years, I should have asked them this question. You talk about the great, great problem of people not having the knowledge. Now, nobody could dispute you. You must be 100% right in that. It's an absolute, it's a terrible, terrible problem. We sometimes blame the mass media, we blame films, we blame television, we blame the internet, we blame the mobile phones, the cell phones, all of that. But I've always wondered, are people as clever as we think they are? Now, I'm not trying to say for a minute that we're more intelligent than people who don't get this sort of thing. But when we cast aspersions, and I'm not saying you cast aspersions on people, but some of us in the independent media, we sometimes get pissed off with people. And we say, oh, they're just not getting it. And we call them names. Oh, they're sheeple and they're all this. Are we being hard on them, Jordan? Is it difficult for people to get this?
Well, I'm sure it is, because when you're born, you come into this world with no background experience whatsoever, and so you obviously, whether you like it or not, your life is molded for you around the culture you came into. We've talked about that before. So if you're born in Africa, your African gods and your African ways of living and the African understanding of God and country, and so, or if you were born in the vast area of China, your parents were Chinese, your friends, your family, your town, your country, and so all your life you have lived in that particular culture. And so it doesn't matter where you're born, you come in with nothing and grow into that culture. And most people have never stopped to think, well, that's just what my culture happens to believe and the way we live. But when you start traveling around the world and meeting people from all countries of the world, you begin to see very quickly that all belief systems are based on the culture of the people that live in that land. The Nordic peoples have Vikings, gods, Nordic gods who are very strong, but they're always very heavily covered with heavy coats. Was because they are cold. It's a very cold area for their gods. But in Africa, their gods are almost wearing nothing. Why? Because they don't have to. It's hot in Africa. And so every culture, their gods look like the people. And so we say, there's a joke goes around that God created man and then man returned the favor. And so the idea is that the concept of God being something higher than we are, something you cannot see, and that's why I refer to it as a great presence, the divine presence. It's not an individual, it's not a man, it's a presence, a spiritual, unseen intelligence around us in the universe, in watching the creatures that have been created. We're watching the brilliance of the way the weather works and the way the animals live. So it's a presence in the earth that shows some kind of an intelligence that put all of this together. And of course, when you want to talk about that, that's a whole another story. I mean, we can talk about whether there's a God or not for hours. But the point is that I refer to God as a divine presence, a spiritual, obviously powerful, intelligent way that the universe is put together. So, but it just really depends on where you were born as to your particular concept of God and what you think. And I've told you before, and I'll say it again, that there's a very big difference between theology. Theology means the worship of God, comes from the Greek word the, T-H-E, the, or theo is in Greek is God. And so there's a very big difference between theology, which is the study of God, and mythology, M-Y-T-H. Mythology is a story. And mythos means a story. It doesn't mean it's good or bad, true or not. It's just a story. And so the difference between mythology, a story, And theology, the study of God, is very simple. Whatever it is that you happen to believe about God is what is called theology. Whatever it is you believe is theology. Whatever your friend across the street in his church believes about God is mythology. So whatever anybody else in the world believes about God is a bunch of bull, it's all mythology. But what you believe is the actual truth. That's the real truth about God. And so everybody keeps that idea in mind that what they believe about God is the absolute truth. That's theology, as opposed to everyone else on the earth who believes in God. But that's all mythology. It has no bearing on anything. So obviously, if you are in a particular church, you wouldn't be in that church and following that religion if it wasn't the absolute truth, because you're extraordinarily brilliant, intellectually superior, and therefore if you are in a particular church, then that's the right one to be in. You wouldn't be in another church, because if the other church was filled with wisdom and knowledge and truth, you would be over there, but you're not over there. You're at this church. That means that this particular religion has the absolute truth, and everybody else, they're all nice people, but they don't understand what's going on. So it's very ludicrous on the surface even to think that you have the whole truth and everybody else in the world that has a different view is mythology, has no basis in fact at all.
But it's fundamental, of course, to religious beliefs, and that's an incredible point. Right, we're going to pause there. We're going to break for news at the top of the hour. Jordan Maxwell is staying with us. Jordan is brought to you tonight by freestylehomes.com. Please check out freestylehomes.com and say hi to Andy and thank him for sponsoring this and last month's appearance of Jordan. When we come back, Jordan, it's really up to you. I'm guessing you'll want to get into symbolism. I'm guessing you'll want to get into what the master plan was when these religions were thought up. How detailed was it? The men and women, or the elite, or the hidden hand that came up with these ideas, and any number of things you want to get into. We'll have the best part of an hour in the second hour. But you go and grab a cup of coffee or some water, and we'll meet back here again in about 8 minutes' time.
Sounds good to me.
Marvellous, Jordan. Jordan Maxwell then will go and refresh himself there. I will do the same. Martin Oakes was on to say Nikola Tesla was obsessed with the numbers 3, 6 and 9 and believed these numbers hold the key to the universe. Martin, I will play your Tesla song this week, by the way. Again, it is brilliant. Ian was on to say Jordan's knowledge of languages and history is prolific and interesting. Big thanks to him, says Ian. There's so many tweets. Look at the tweets. If you want to see what other people are saying, by the way, just go to the search Twitter bar and put Richie Allen Show, all one word, in there, and you'll see exactly what other people are saying. And I will get through more of your tweets and emails in the second hour. This is a special programme. It's brought to you in association with freestylehomes.com. Do check out freestylehomes.com. Thank you, Andy, and all the gang there. The preeminent scholar, Jordan Maxwell, 5 decades researching the occult, religions, much more besides. Check out jordanmaxwellshow.com. For now, that is the official website for Jordan Maxwell. Get on there, jordanmaxwellshow.com. Do it now. I've tweeted it out already. Welcome back, sir. I hope you're refreshed and looking forward to another 45-50 minutes of good chat.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. I don't know how good a shape I'm in, but I'm here. So, there was a couple of things I wanted to say first. I have a very high regard, and people who know me and have heard me before know that I have a very high regard for spirituality and for the idea, the very conceptual idea of a divine presence in the universe that men have called God. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I believe in that great power and that that great center of wisdom in the universe. So you might say, I'm a believer. I believe in God. But I also intellectually understand that so many of mankind's beliefs about the spirit world and about the great spirit in the universe come from man-made traditions from the ancient world when the world was totally different thousands of years ago, and people did not have the ability at that time to research and study where things come from and have great libraries where they can go back into ancient history and see what the people believed. No, they were just living as farmers and as hunters, etc. They were just people of the land, just living the way that they grew up from 5,000-7,000 years ago, and they didn't know, so they came up with ideas and belief systems eventually, and that was accepted by the people generally. And over the thousands of years, it's an ebb and flow of ideas and belief systems and concepts. And that's why all over the world the belief systems are different, because it's come from man, it's come from the different cultures, and they each came up with their own particular ideas and belief systems. And today we have major religions, but they're found in certain countries. And so I have a very high respect for God, for the idea of a spiritual presence in the universe that I am totally committed to. I'm just interested in the history of men, of mankind, and what we have done, not what God has done, but what we have done on the earth as humans, what the superstructure of life on the earth that man has developed, banks and governments and institutions and the police, the military, and governmental systems and religious systems. These are all man-made, and when you begin to look at it really for a long time and start researching into where these different institutions have come from, you will find that most of them that we have today in our world have come from Rome, from the ancient Roman Empire. The concepts and the ideas of money and customs and laws all come from Rome. But Rome got their understandings from the Greeks, and the Greeks got it from the Persians and the Medes, the Persians, and the people of the Middle East, and they got it from India. And India, no, God knows where they got it from because it goes back so far. So the idea is that to understand the flow of ideas and belief systems is to help you know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Now, can I just jump
Because
in there and ask you this? Because this is really, it's a great time to ask this. Your best guess then, Jordan,
say it again.
I'm asking you for your best guess here. Your best guess. Did the elite or the powerful hidden hand, did they notice many, many, many eons ago, did they notice people's natural tendency to want to believe in a spiritual being who created everything? And did they then begin to exploit that? Or do you think the hidden hand created the idea to begin with? That's the $64 million question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a very difficult question. It's a catch-22 kind of thing. But I think basically that the peoples of this world have hardwired into their humanity. It's a part of humanity to want to, I guess when you're growing up as a child, you look to your father and mother for security. They take care of you. If there's any problems, they heal you when you're sick. They protect you from the outside world. They feed you and give you life. And so you look up to your parents. Well, you better when you're 2 and 3 and 4 years old. And so I think it's involved. It's part of our nature as humans, as we grow up, to realize that there are other people who are in charge of us, and other people are providing for you, which they do. All of us provide for each other. That's what we call an economy. But I think it's hardwired in humans to want to know and believe that there's something higher and something more important in the universe than us, and we call that God. Well, God is simply dog spelled backwards. It's just a word. But like I said, I have the highest of admiration and respect for that idea, because I am totally convinced that's true, that we do have a higher intelligence behind our life and behind the creations that we see in the world and the animal kingdom and the life on the earth. There's got to be, obviously, I mean, people like Albert Einstein, Tesla, and all kinds of other brilliant individuals have admitted, yes, there is something going on in this world that we are not in charge of. There seems to be some kind of an overshadowing, and I like that term, overshadowing power that divinely directs the destiny of the human race, so that there are certain laws in the universe. We've come to understand it like what goes around comes around. You do something, you get paid back for it. If you do good, you get paid back good. You do bad, and it comes back to you. So there's some kind of a strange laws in the universe. Well, who puts those laws into action and makes sure that they're carried out? And like I said to you a couple of weeks ago, when you see thousands of birds flying, and all of a sudden, all of them instantly change and go the different way. And then all of a sudden, everyone changes and flies a different way. And the same thing with fish. You see thousands of fish in a school of fish, and they instantaneously change and go in a different direction. What causes that? There seems to be some kind of an overshadowing brilliance behind the movement and life of animals, humans. So there obviously is something very powerful in the universe that we, for the lack of a better term, call God. And I have no problem with that. I respect that idea completely. So no one's going to be able to call me an atheist or an agnostic. I do believe in God. I believe in the Great Spirit. But having said that, I think that we do a horrible disjustice, a horrible injustice to God or to the Great Spirit when we replace wisdom and knowledge that's built into the world that we live in and don't see it and begin to create our own ideas, our own belief systems. Like the scripture says, that it says in the New Testament, they have created for themselves teachers. And that's exactly what humans do. We create a whole system of theology, of religion, that we came up with, and we codify it and put it in books the way we think it happened. And now, in order to be respected and be a preacher or a minister in that particular religion, you have to go to college and go to university and get a degree in studying what we think everything is about. So you study it, and if you get a degree and can answer all the questions, now we give you a permit. It's called a license. And now you're licensed to teach our ideas. My feeling is, well, suppose I've gone for 5 years to your university to learn to be a preacher, and I come to find out all that I'm teaching is just your ideas. Since you run the university, you wrote the books, and I'm just preaching your ideas. And so I learned a long time ago, no, the idea of religion is one thing. The true spiritual understanding of who we creatures are called humans, who we are, and when all the rest of the life forms on the earth, where we came from, and the divine brilliance behind the seasons of the year and why we have them, and why things work the way they do in the universe. There's a brilliance behind all of it, but it has nothing to do with our particular religion. So I'm not anti-God. I'm just anti-man-made concepts that are based on politics, money, corporations,
and control. I'm going to read a few more tweets now. Sarah was on to say, what are Jordan's thoughts on the Bible being a spiritual book? For example, Jacob named a place Peniel in the book, and of course that goes along with the pineal gland. You might want to come back to that, Jordan, you might not. But I want to just read a few more out now before we get lost again. Wayne was on to say, Richie, there is only one truth for me. Blood is blood and breath is sacred. Politics, religion, belief systems are bollocks, he says, which is a great Irish swear word. Moving on, Willie says, hi Willie, that's Willie Van T on Twitter. Please ask Jordan what the best approach would be to share this knowledge with believers without creating anger? That's another $50,000 question. Willie, how do you speak to somebody who's indoctrinated in these belief systems? I don't know. Jordan might want to get into that now in a few minutes. And I did have a couple of emails I wanted to mention as well. Sean McDonald earlier on sent me an email. A lot of these emails, a lot of emails coming in. People are using the email system on my website, and for some reason, when you use an email on that, it replicates it and it sends me 20 times the same email. I'll have to get that fixed. I must ask Karen to have a look at that. Sean McDonald was on to say, what does Jordan think about religions from tens of thousands of years ago? Credo Mutwa's theory of the Anunnaki. That's from Sean. And Andy Gardner was on. Andy, thanks very much for your email. But we might not get into this. Jordan might get into this in a future program. Andy asks Jordan to speak about the planet Saturn and how that planet relates or influences to our society. We might get into that in future programs. Andy Gardner, but thanks for your email anyway. So on talking to people, Jordan, and sharing this information with people, because if we don't do it, if you and I, and when I say you and I know, I'm being a bit cheeky, because you have spent your life researching this, and I've benefited from your research. I've been able to, you've been my Cliff Notes, basically. You've spent 5 decades working on this, you and others, and I get to read it and understand it. It's easy for me. How do you deal with people? And I'm an Irish boy, as is obvious by my outrageous accent, so we know. I mean, I have a grandfather, a really, really, really good man, a decent man. He's alive, goes to church 6-7 days a week. He isn't pious. He isn't looking for attention. He believes in God, and he believes he's going to go to heaven when he dies. He believes it, even though I don't believe it. I've got aunts, I've got uncles, I've got friends. How do you bring this sort of thing up, Jordan, in casual conversation? How do you do it?
Well, first of all, there's an idea that I need to explain to you the way spirituality seems to work. You know, if you are a young man and you are drafted into the military, and the first day when you get off the bus, for the first day you're in the military, you get off the bus on the military grounds, and you say to the commanding officer that's there to meet you, and you say, well, since I've got to be in the military and I have to be here, I need to go to Washington, D.C. and work with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I need to go to the Pentagon. That's what I need to go. Well, they're going to take you out behind the barn and knock your teeth out and teach you a lesson. You don't tell power where you're going. They tell you where you're going. And you may go to the Pentagon to work with the Joint Chiefs, but they'll call you. You don't call them. That's their decision, not yours. And so that idea is true even in the spirit world. You don't decide ever that you want to know the truth and that you want to worship the Lord and worship God. You're going to do this and you're going to do that. That is not the way it works. The higher power calls you. You don't call it. You don't decide what you're going to believe and what you're going to do. The Spirit, whatever that thing is that we've talked about, whatever that great presence is in the universe, it calls you. You don't call it. And that's therefore, if you want to know and you are dying to know and reading as much as you can and listening and trying to understand as much as you can, it's because there is a great spirit in the universe that for whatever reason has chosen you to know. And it has put it into you to look and understand and read and study. And so it's not because you are so brilliant that you figured out that you need to read. No, something is drawing you to a subject. And so therefore, understanding that, unless you are personally are wanting and drawn to know and want to know and dedicating your life to knowing, then it's useless trying to talk to you because you don't want to know. You're not interested. You never asked that question. You're not interested in that question, and you wish the people to leave you alone because you don't care one way or the other. If we were created, you don't care if there's a God. You don't even care what's going on. As long as you've got your belly full and you got food and got a place to live and your basketball and your hockey and whatever you're into, that's all you care about. You don't care about anything else. So therefore, if you've got your own religion, you've got your own people in your own church, and you are happy there, you don't care to look for anything that's even more important, that's even more basic and important. You don't care. And so that being the case, it's only a handful of people who have been called out. You see, there's a difference between being a disciple and an apostle. Those are two words that are used in the Bible, but they mean different things. A disciple is one who practices the discipline of listening to a teacher. So if you're always listening to this teacher, you're a disciple of his. But the word apostle is another word which means one who is called out. One who is called out is an apostle, simply meaning if the Great Spirit that you call God has decided to call you. Why? Because it knows you. I don't know who you are. I don't know how valuable you are, how good you are, and I don't even care. It's none of my business. But if God sees in you something that he wants done and something he wants to use you for, so to speak, if the Spirit that directs the destiny of the world sees in you something it wants you to do, then it will call you. It will make sure that you want to know and will agitate your spirit to know.
And do you have to figure
So
out yourself then what to do with it? Is it up
say
to
it
you?
again.
Is it up to you then, as an individual, to figure out what it is that you must do with that information? Is that a personal choice then, Jordan? Or is that beyond our control as well? Are we
I
moving
think
in
that's
directions?
beyond your control.
Right,
I
that's an
think that's
interesting one.
beyond our control.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that whatever it is that you are drawn to, for some reason, people say it all the time. I don't know why I'm just drawn to this particular person or this particular subject. I'm just fascinated with numbers. I just want to be a dentist. For whatever reason, I want to follow this thing in my life, and I'm particularly drawn to it. There is a reason why certain people, why generally speaking, people will go into some kind of a profession, some sort of a teaching career, or an artist, or an airline hostess. People will do whatever they do, but there must be a reason why you picked that. And it has to do with some kind of a spiritual presence
So it isn't
in the
free will then.
universe.
So it isn't
Say-
free will. So you didn't begin back in the late 1950s to give away your age. You didn't begin your research because you came to an independent conclusion through free will to decide to go down that road, no more than I decided when I was in my late teens, early 20s, that I wanted to get involved in playing music at nightclubs, and then I wanted to go on the radio. I didn't consciously choose to do that. Something else was going on, Jordan, and the same with
Yes,
you.
that's what I feel. That's what
Right.
I think, that there is a destiny. And the reason why I think that is not just because it's my opinion. It's because I have been around too many people who know things, and I have personally been in the company of particular people that I know that can tell you exactly what you are going to do a year from now. And let me explain. I have someone who's done that for me many, many times, and every time he's exactly correct. He will tell me where I'm going to be at the corner, what the street names are, what car I will be in, or who I'm going to be with, and what I'm going to be wearing, what they're going to be wearing. And in the car, I'm going to say this, this, and that, and the other person driving is going to say this, this, and that. And he goes on and gives me a whole a prophecy in minute detail the cross streets, the car you're going to be in, what you're going to say, and what that other person's going to say. And then a year later, when that exact same thing happens precisely as he said it would, and I actually said what he said I was going to say without even thinking, then you have to, and I've seen this happen to me more than one time by the same person. So I have to realize, most people would say, my God, how does he do that? But that's not the correct question to ask. The correct question to ask, what does that tell you about your life? That's the question to ask. How he does it is irrelevant, but the point he can do it tells you something about your personal life. Meaning, if he can see a year ahead of time exactly what you are going to say and exactly where you're going to be, that means he has seen the future. And if that is true, then that implies that somebody already knows your whole life from the moment you were born to the moment you die, exactly what you were going to do and say and do. And so, I mean, I'm not saying I believe it. No, I have to believe it because he's done this for me more than one time.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what does that mean for our life and your freedom of thought that you're going to do this and you're going to do that? Well, from my indication is that somebody can tell you a year from now where you're going to be, what you're going to be wearing, what you're going to say, and what the person with you is going to be wearing and what they're going to say. What does that imply? That's scary.
Well, it
Right off
implies,
the top.
yeah, it implies one of two things. One, it implies that you're right and that there is a plan and there is a predetermined path for all of us. It could also imply is that there are people with very special talents that can see ahead of time and see where we are. But that would still leave us with our free will. This is really fascinating. It's 29 minutes past the hour. The great Jordan Maxwell is on. This is episode 2 of a monthly, an ongoing monthly series where Jordan is taking on really important subjects. I want to read a couple of quick tweets before we move on.
Sure.
Najat is in New York and she's from Yemen. And she came on the programme and talked to me before. A wonderful lady. How you doing, Najat? Nice to hear from you. How does religion create racism and hierarchy? For example, the Jewish faith telling their followers that they are the chosen people. Now, Jordan did kind of touch on that at the beginning, Najat, but he might want to get into it again in a minute. Ian was on to say, Ian Greenhaig, how you doing, Ian? The Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, all of these are based on the religion of ancient Sumer. This is a kept secret, says Ian. Thanks very much for that. Ian, there's so many of them. Massive amounts of tweets coming in at Richie Allen Show on Twitter, richie@richieallenshow.com. And Kirsten McCoy, how you doing, Kirsten? Lovely to hear from you. Simply says on Twitter that she agrees with Jordan. Sean came back on to say is that he'd like Jordan to give a brief answer, if at all possible, on his thoughts on the Anunnaki, who apparently existed before modern religion. So you can pick up any of those points now that you'd like there, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, I think I've mentioned before that I was in business with Zecharia Sitchin. I helped send him to 5 countries around the world and help get his books published. So I was actually a business partner of sorts with him for quite some time in the 90s. And I had a lot of time to sit and talk with him, not just about business, but about everything. And I would meet him in Las Vegas, stay with, and meet him over the weekend, and we'd sit and talk in the hotels. And up in Portland, Oregon, we sat and talked for hours. So I've sat and talked with him for a long time and kind of got a general overall view about where he's coming from, etc. And there's a lot of interesting things about the subject of who we are and where we've come from. And according to what it looks like from the history that we know of and what we can surmise from history, that there were, obviously, this is to me overwhelming and obvious, that there were a long time ago very highly intelligent creatures here. Whether they were human or not, I don't know. I wasn't there. But I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of years ago. There were profoundly brilliant civilizations which had a command of technology and knowledge of the universe that we don't even come near having. The Hindus give us a little bit about the astronomical cycles of creation, about how far back life goes, where does space start and end, and where does time begin. Those kind of incredibly interesting subjects. But there has obviously been on this earth millions and millions of years ago high civilizations. I don't know if they were human, but somebody built those artifacts which are found all over the world. Temples, huge, enormous temples under the ocean, like we talked about before, off the coast of Cuba. Enormous temples have been found in the ocean. Off the coast of Okinawa in the Pacific, enormous, huge, elaborate temples are sitting on the ocean floor. Off of Japan, we know that there's pyramids, a huge pyramid sitting on the ocean floor of the Atlantic. 10 miles north of Bimini in the Bahama Banks is a huge pyramid sitting on the ocean floor. So there's an incredible amount of temples and great edifices that have been built, and they're all underwater now, or they're out in the middle of a desert today. And of course, when you get into the mining, like in South Africa, when there were, many years ago, when they were doing mining for precious metals, etc., they were bored down into the earth and go so far down in their mines, they would go so far down that the strata that they hit on the bottom, when they get as far as they were going to go, that strata was said to be by paleontologists and scientists of the day, and still agreed today, at that far down in the earth in Africa, it's in strata which is 3.5 to 4 billion years old. When it's many miles down, it's 3.5 to 4 billion with a B years old, and yet they're finding handmade artifacts. Handmade
Handmade.
artifacts.
That's right, Jordan. That's right.
And those handmade artifacts, we're talking about strata 3.5 billion years ago. So 3.5 billion years ago, there were highly intelligent people who knew how to mold iron, to mold the different metals, make rings and bracelets out of them, build temples. We have, as I said, all over the world, great, beautiful temples, ancient temples that we look at, we marvel at how incredibly awesome they are, but never thinking for a moment, who put these things together? Who chiseled out and worked for, obviously, did incredible carvings of temples in India and Africa and Asia and in Russia, all of the different strange things that have been found all over the world that obviously tell us that we are not the first people on the earth. There have been people here, whoever they are. They may not have been Homo sapiens. They may have been higher forms of life that have come here from another place, but it doesn't matter. Whatever they were, the most important point is they were here 3.5 billion years ago. So what does that do for your theology about God and creation, etc.? And of course, the Old Testament is saying that. I mean, that's a whole nother subject when you get into the first and second sentences of the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, it says, the first sentence is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's not what it says in the original Hebrew. It doesn't say that. It says, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, not El. So in Hebrew, God is El, E-L. But in the Hebrew Bible, read it in Hebrew, it says, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Elohim is a plural. It's like putting an S on the end of an English word, meaning more than one. So Elohim should be correctly read, in the beginning, the gods created the heavens and the earth. And then it says in the Genesis 2:1-2, and the earth was without form and void. Logic alone would tell you there's something wrong here. You mean God created the heavens and the earth, and it was a void? What are you talking about, void? And it was so God created the heavens and the earth, and without form and void. Well, how do you create something that has no form and it's void? What does that mean? Well, obviously you're not reading it correctly. So you go back to the Hebrew words, and it says, and in the beginning, God tohu vavohu. The Hebrew word is tohu vavohu, which simply means not was created without form and void. No, tohu vavohu means became. The word is became a waste and a desolation. So what the correct way to read Genesis 1 and 1-2 is, in the beginning the gods created the heavens and the earth became a waste and a desolation. And what's interesting about that is that there's only two places in the Old Testament where tohu vavohu is used. Only two places. One is in Genesis 1-2, where the earth became a waste and of desolation, and in Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, I think is in the 4th chapter, where Jeremiah says, I was on my bed and God gave me a vision. This is from the Old Testament book of Jeremiah. It says, God gave me a vision of the world and of the earth, and it was beautiful. There was a beautiful paradise, he said, and there were huge and beautiful cities, and the beautiful birds and incredibly beautiful animals, but there was no man found, period. And then it says there was no man found. Well, then who built the great cities, and who built the great temples, etc.? Well, it says, I saw the earth when God let me see the earth, and there was a beautiful paradise, and there were beautiful cities, but there was no man. And then it goes on to say, and then I saw tohu vavohu. There's the word again. And the earth became a waste and a desolation. Simply meaning that the prophet Daniel was saying, Jeremiah was saying, I saw the earth when it was a paradise. There were beautiful temples, beautiful buildings, but there was no humans. And then I saw the whole earth became a waste and a desolation, meaning something terrible happened. It could have been an extraterrestrial war among extraterrestrials, or a terrible war between those who were on the earth who had high technology, profoundly wise and profoundly important technology that they knew and they had that dwarfs our understanding of atomic bombs. They had stuff far, far more powerful than atomic. So who were these people who were highly intelligent, creative people who created the great temples and had profoundly important nuclear weapons and power?
And the ability to fly and everything else. I got to do a recap very quickly now. I hate to stop you mid-flow, but these programs you and I do, and it was the same when we did them back in the late 2000s on the radio in Spain. They just disappear. They fly by. It's 19 minutes to the top of the hour. We got Jordan for another 10 or 12 minutes. Jordan, a number of people are listening to what you're saying right now with enormous interest. And a question that's come up, I've been emailed by 3 people, Karen, by a guy called Todd, and Andy. All of them asking this: can we connect to these all-intelligent beings who walked this earth so long ago through avenues like past life regression therapy. Do you buy into this? And this is an opinion question now. I don't know how much experience you've had with it, but can we do past life regression and get a window, Jordan, onto what life was like back then?
Well, I've known some really top of the line past life regressionists, but I've never done that because I was always afraid to do that. I think it's probably possible to do that. I think it's at least possible. I'm myself, I'm afraid to do it because I've had so much tragedy in my life. At my age, I don't want to see any more tragedy that happened to me in other lifetimes. I've already seen enough in this one.
Fair
But
enough,
I
fair
think it's
enough.
at
Yeah.
least possible.
We've had a gentleman called Sam King on the program. Sam is based in South Manchester, and he independent people whom I know have gone to see Sam and have gotten into past life regression with him, and they were able to come out with some really, really interesting things. And it's an area that I'm more and more interested in. But listeners, if anybody wants to find out more about that, go to healingking.com. Big up to Sam for coming on the program in the past. We'll get him on again in the future. This is massive, Jordan. I mean, such a massive, massive subject. And we haven't even gotten into symbolism. I know it's something that you might get into in future programs.
Sure.
You know, and of course, where we go each month is entirely up to you. Listeners have been saying tonight, I wonder will Jordan get into, in the future, the Knights Templar? Will he get into that sort of thing? You can find Jordan online at jordanmaxwellshow.com. jordanmaxwellshow.com. That's where he is for the moment. He'll eventually get his own website back, please. Let's say, please God, as the Irish say, sometime in the very near future. Freestylehomes.com have brought Jordan, have sponsored Jordan tonight. Thanks to them for that again. Like I said, we've got 10 or 12 more minutes. Just a couple of quick tweets before we go on. Andrea was back on to say, in Germany, we use tuhuwabuhu. I probably said that all wrong, Jordan. I'm terrible at pronouncing things. That expression you used, tohuwabu, to express chaos, disarray, untidiness, and anarchy. That's how they use it in Germany, she says. Wayne was on to say, when I meditate, I have seen life and machines of non-human origins. Is this race memory, or am I viewing another world? Wayne says there. So the last 8 or 10 minutes, my friend, are yours. So you can, just to give you an idea of where we are time-wise, so you can kind of close it out now on any, any way you want. But it's been fascinating so far. Thanks again for doing this. It's brilliant.
Well, I appreciate being on the show. I love doing your show in particular, and I really thank the sponsor. And it's a very, very interesting and important world we live in. And unfortunately, like I've said, so many people are so busy trying to care for their everyday life and the family that they don't really have a lot of time to sit down and contemplate the darkness of this world and all the strange things which are right there in your face that you can't answer. A great book that you really need to get, and it is readily available everywhere. It's an old book, but it's so well respected. It's still around today. Get it anywhere at any bookstore. It's called The Complete Works of Charles Fort, F-O-R-T. Remember the name, Charles Fort. And the book is called The Complete Works of Charles Fort because he wrote 3 large volumes, but it was all 3 volumes have been put into one now. And so get the book, Complete Works of Charles Fort. Why? Because what Charles Fort was able to do was to rummage through libraries in New York and God knows elsewhere and find all of the strangest happenings, strangest things in this world that defy explanation. There's a lot of strange things that are interesting to talk about, but what Charles Fort did was find all kinds of incredibly off-the-wall, strange things which have happened, which exist in the world today that defies anybody's interpretation, defies explanation, that have no explanation whatsoever, and that science does not deal with at all, because scientists have to look like they are impressive and they know everything. But on the things that this huge volume outlines, thousands and thousands of things that are on the earth, that scientists have no idea in the world. They just look at it with glazed eyes and act like it's not even there. Why? Because it defies your imagination. It defies anything, and yet it's right there. Go look at it. But the other important thing about Charles Fort's book is that he documents and footnotes every paragraph. Anything he comes up with, he'll tell you where the newspaper was printed, what day, what page it was on, who the author was. So he documents and footnotes everything. It's an extraordinary collection of stuff you've never heard before. The complete works of Charles Fort. And so when you go through a book like that and then begin reading all the many other reference works around the world of strange phenomena, strange temples that are found on the ocean, and when oil companies are drilling off the coast of England and the North Sea, and they go all the way down, they hit the floor of the ocean and start drilling into the ocean floor. And way down into the ocean floor, they're bringing up trinkets and handmade jewelry, all kinds of stuff, which you're looking at civilizations that are under the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, for God's sake. What does that tell you? And then you look at, why do you have a huge desert in Africa, in North Africa? Why? And why is it in the sands and on the Sphinx? I've been to Egypt 3 times, toured it all over Egypt. So I know I've been there and I've seen the things that it's just unimaginable to be able to be there and see with your own eyes. Temples and the Sphinx with water erosion and seashells on the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Great Pyramid. Not the middle one.
That's right. Yeah.
Seashells on the pyramid, and another thing in Egypt, we are told, we who don't know from nothing, we're just told by our government-sponsored scientists that the pyramids were built as tombs, and that's all you need to know. Go drink your beer and don't worry about it. They were just tombs. Well, what is interesting is that in Egypt, all over Egypt, Egyptians were world famous for keeping records. They recorded everything. Whatever happened, they recorded it. But there's nothing in Egypt, anywhere in the old ancient writings of Egypt, about a pyramid. Nobody wrote anything about a pyramid, period. Nothing. So you would think, well, if the Pharaoh built the pyramid, they at least made a little mention in the newspaper that he built a pyramid. Nothing is mentioned in the ancient Egyptian about pyramids, period.
Jordan, we're unfortunately going to have to leave it there. It's flown by. It really has. You've been listening to the Richie Allen Show on davidicke.com. A very special monthly show. This is the second one with Jordan Maxwell, brought to us by freestylehomes.com. Wonderful insight into where organised religion came from, whom it benefits, the similarities, everything else that we've gotten through. If you've missed any of it, the podcast will be online in around about 35 minutes' time, and the entire conversation will be on YouTube tomorrow. Do go to jordanmaxwellshow.com and find out more about Jordan there if you don't know already, and follow his work on there as well. Jordan, it's brilliant. It really is. We began speaking in 2009, and one constant in all of that time is the programs just disappear, Jordan. They really do. That 2 hours is just gone in the blink of an eye. But I want to thank you sincerely for all the work you do. I love you and the work that you do. I'm thrilled that you've agreed to come on this program every month. You asked for nothing. It must be said that if anybody's listening to this and thinking Jordan Maxwell is being paid, he isn't. I decided, because of difficulties Jordan had, to ask people who had companies to sponsor it, and I would throw $100 Jordan's way. He had nothing to do with that. He's not asked for anything, ever. In all the years I've been interviewing Jordan Maxwell on television and radio, he's never asked for a thing. Nothing. My friend, thank you very much. I'll give you the last word, 60 seconds, and we'll wrap it up then.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, just go to my website, which is Jordan Maxwell Show, SHOW. Very simple, jordanmaxwellshow.com. On there, you will see that I have a Research Society button that says Research Society. What that is a brand new website in which I'm going to download all of my work eventually. I'm downloading enormous amounts of material, videos, audios, documents, books. It's called the Jordan Maxwell Research Society. And all it is just my new website. My other one's been stolen for the past 5 years, so I've got a brand new website. And I refer to it as a research society because I want it to be an enormous array of documents and pictures and books on all kinds of subjects. So you can, if you want to join that, it's very easy to do. So go on my website, jordanmaxwellshow.com, and you'll see Research Society. Click on it and read about it. And if you'd like to join, please do. And I want to thank you again for having me on, Richie, and can't wait. We'll talk the next time.
It'll be brilliant. It'll be the 3rd week in November. And but I'll be in touch with you tomorrow anyway, so we can chat about 1 or 2 other things. Look after yourself, Jordan. Thanks again, my friend. We'll do this again real soon. Brilliant stuff.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Marvellous. Jordan Maxwell on the line to us from his home in California.